So today's webinar is on MyQuickPass and a process for streamlining your clinical hour compliance management process. We are very excited to present this module to you as a very, very amazing new functionality that we've introduced into My Evaluations about 6 months ago. And it's been about 2 years in development, and it was a soft release about 6 months ago or more. Some clients are already utilizing it. So for today, this is actually a first public introduction to all of you. The main objective of today's webinar is for you administratively to understand what MyQuickPass is, how do you set it up, what are the strategies for managing MyQuickPass and the geofence configuration. Most importantly, I want all of you to clearly understand what my schedule is and what it isn't, and what it can do for you and your trainees, so that you're very astute and knowledgeable of the functionality. And of course, we'll talk about the data integration and how you see all the information. We're going to go through all of that very extensively. I'm confident that at the end of this webinar, we will have addressed all your questions regarding MyQuickPass. So what is MyQuickPass? Well, MyQuickPass is a My Evaluations product that allows you to set up location boundaries in plural. You can create different boundaries around different locations, different buildings, and your users can download the My Evaluations app for either the iPhone or for Android devices. And once they install that app and they give the appropriate permissions, which we'll review today, then their entire duty hour reporting process is automated at that point. By you setting boundaries, when a resident will enter those boundaries or exit those boundaries, the system will automatically mark the time they came into the boundary and the time they left the boundary. So it's very important as we go through this process that you learn the particular language, you understand where privacy concerns will come in from people. We've already gone through all of this in the last couple of years in reviewing all the different concerns that are there. So my objective here today is to make sure that you also are aware of those concerns that people will voice, and you can properly answer those concerns to move forward. So this entire process takes away the need for the residents to have to manually mark their entry and exit from different locations, clinical activity locations. It completely automates the process for you. The MyQuickPass service itself has to be activated for your department. Many of you that are on the call today do not have this service activated for your program or for your institution. It is a service that's part of My Evaluations. Depending on your particular service contract with My Evaluations, that service may or may not be available for you, meaning there may be an additional cost depending on what your service agreement with My Evaluations is. So if you are interested in this, you want to reach out to sales@myevaluations.com, or you can reach out to me directly, david@myevaluations.com, and I can either myself or sales will be able to guide you and answer your questions in terms of what service costs go along with it. So if you don't see these features currently available in your program or institution, it's just because they haven't been activated yet. And we can move forward from there. So in thinking about MyQuickPass, let's talk a little bit about what the technology is and the functionality. So one new vocabulary word you want to add is the idea of geofencing. It's very important that you understand that we are talking about geofencing, and I'm going to distinguish that from what MyQuickPass is not. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. So what is geofencing? Well, geofencing is the ability to set a virtual parameter around a real world location. So on a map, you'll actually be able to draw a perimeter around a hospital or around a building. And then the technology will use Wi-Fi, GPS, and cellular data to monitor that location. And any person that has a device with the My Valuations app on it, whenever they get near that location, the perimeter of that location, then the geofence system will know when they are inside that geofence location or they are outside that geofence location. That's what geofencing is. And the entire benefit of geofencing is being able to not only automate the entire process of entry and exit of geofence locations, but it gives you much more accurate information in terms of how much time does a trainee stay at a particular location. And of course, it's best to set up very small areas for easier tracking. And it's important to understand that with those areas that you set up, there are certain technological limitations you have to take into consideration. If the locations you're setting up are in urban areas where cell towers and Wi-Fi routers are denser, then geofencing is going to be a bit more accurate. When I say accurate, in terms of the sensitivity of what it will pick up, whether you're inside or outside of that geofence, it's about 100 to 200 meters in terms of what the technology does. This isn't limited to the MyQuickPass technology, but it's limited to the iPhone technology and the Android technology in terms of how sensitive those are. And we have to balance that sensitivity with how much power we're consuming from the device. If we were checking every second, we would be much more accurate. We could bring that accuracy down to 50 feet, but that would require constant checking and it would drain the battery very quickly on the device. So there's a soft balance here between how accurate we want to be and how well we're collecting information. So with the current settings, our clients that have been using the service have gotten excellent results. Now, if you're in an urban area that happens to have a lot of skyscrapers like, let's say, Chicago and New York City, and in that case, geofencing might not work reliably, and that all has to do with GPS inaccuracies. If any of you have ever used your phone for directions to a particular place, and you've been in a place like Manhattan, you'll notice that the mobile app will get lost when it gets to different locations. In my own experience, when I go to downtown New York, to the Wall Street area, forget about it. I can't get any GPS location, so I have to actually start looking at street signs to find my way around. Now, when you get out into more rural areas where cell towers and Wi-Fi routers are more sparse, geofencing accuracy can be less accurate. So instead of it being 300 to 600 feet, it might be 1,000 feet, it might be 1,500 feet. There can be some variability on that in those more rural areas. What I have to assure you, though, is although there can be minutes that pass, 2-3 minutes that pass, because if you're driving away from a rural location and you're expecting the QuickPass to know that you've left that location, it might take an extra 2 minutes for the MyQuickPass application to know you've left that rural location. And that level of accuracy is still quite acceptable. So it's important that you understand that geofencing and MyQuickPass is not meant to be an instant notification to you that you have now instantly left that location. Now I have the MyQuickPass set up on my phone just because I like to see how the technology is working on a day-to-day basis. And pretty much as soon as I pull up to the building where my office is, it immediately notifies me that I'm there. And when I'm leaving, usually I'm about a block and a half away, and it tells me that I've left. And that level of sensitivity is exactly what we expect. So all of this is to set some understanding for you of what geofencing is and what to expect of the technology, and not to have expectations that are outside the scope of reality. Now, what geofencing is not. Geofencing absolutely is not location tracking, and that's really important. A lot of people incorrectly are mixing up the idea of what geofencing is and what geofencing is not. Geofencing is absolutely not that idea of location tracking of where have you been during the day. So this is also really important for you to understand as you are discussing this. What we heard over the 2 years of our development is, does this mean that MyQuickPass is going to monitor all my movements and it knows where I've been? Not at all. MyQuickPass is only monitoring a geofence location. All the geofence locations that are being monitored are visible to the trainee. I'll show you all of that. So they have full visibility to know exactly where the system is monitoring their entry and exit. But it is very important that you communicate to your trainees that MyQuickPass is not location tracking. We are not monitoring you to see where are you going, where did you go, where have you been. Not at all. It's simply entry and exit. So in order to utilize the MyQuickPass, your trainees need to download the MyVals app that's available from the App Store, both for Google and for Apple. So what I'm going to do is first take you through the process to see what the installation looks like, get an experience of what the actual MyQuickPass application looks like, and how does it work within the MyVals application. And then we're going to look at the administrative process of what you need to do to get things set up. So our first step here is, let's go through that installation process. So you go to the App Store, you download the app, and you log into the app. Well, first we're going to look at the Android installation process. So in the Android installation process, first thing that you have here, you can see there is a message that comes up. Do you want to enable MyQuickPass? So allow MyVals to access this device's location. And there are options here while using the app, only this time, or don't allow. In this instance, we want them to allow using the location. All they do in that instance is click on the option to grant permission. And the next thing that they're going to see is a second window that comes up to allow all the time. So the first window, and again, this is the Android device. This isn't because of our application. This is just how the Android operating system works. And you'll see with the Apple operating system, it's even more cumbersome. So they have to select the option for allow all the time, and they click grant permission, and that's the totality of their setup. They're ready to go. They don't have to do anything else other than that. Well, let's take a look at what you have to do with an Apple device. With an Apple device, with an iPhone, first thing you're going to get is a screen like this. You have to click on grant permission here, as this is the first step. It says allow MyVals to use your location. Same kind of idea as on the Android, allow once, allow while using the app, or don't allow. After they select the option for grant permission, they will get an iOS notification that's asking them, hey, do you want to allow once, allow while using the app, or don't allow? And they have to then again click on the option for allow while using the app. So everything that I'm showing you, please understand that this is how the operating system actually works. This isn't because of the MyEvals app itself, but this is how the operating system works. Notice that it does not give us the option to allow all the time. By default, the operating system only gives the option to allow once or allow while using app. So in this case, the trainee would select allow while using app. If they click allow once, it won't be a problem. The application is going to remind them again, in order for this to work, you have to allow us to use it all of the time, so that we can monitor the device's location relative to the geofence. So after selecting the option for allow while using the app, there's going to be a second prompt in regards to allow always. So in this case, they would click on continue, and they will get yet another operating system notification that says allow MyEvals to also use your location even when you are not using the app, and they would select change to always allow. So if you notice here at the very top, this is enable MyQuickPass step 2 of 3. Yes, there is with the Apple iOS, there's actually a third step. The third step simply gives a confirmation and a notification. In this case, it says turn on Wi-Fi. Make sure your Wi-Fi is turned on to ensure your clinical activities are tracked accurately. So although they may not be connected to Wi-Fi, the system does need Wi-Fi to be enabled for accuracy. That's just how the iOS operating system works. It needs the Wi-Fi to be enabled. So there's a link here, obviously, for them to click on settings to go in and change their settings to enable Wi-Fi. Otherwise, they can click on finish. And once they click on finish, they'll be presented with the MyValuations mobile app. This is the current iteration of the mobile app, and they can click on review MyQuickPass logs, and that would give them access to review all their QuickPass logs, which we're going to review this in more detail, and you're going to see it hands-on process as well. So this gives them the ability to see all their hours, to make edits, to see their duty hour violations. All of this becomes integrated under Review MyQuickPass logs. And all of this data is then automatically integrated into the clinical hour submission page. That means their exact entry and exit times are directly integrated into the clinical hour submission page. They don't have to go in and submit that data separately. All of these entries that are marked as confirmed are automatically confirmed just purely based on the MyQuickPass entries that were collected by the system. And what's really terrific about this, all the violations are also communicated to the trainee in real time as well. So these are just some screens to show you how different violations are showing up. It says you have 2 violations. You can see here there's an overlap error. So an overlap error can happen because the administrator has created 2 geolocations that are too close to each other. So there's an overlap. The system doesn't know which location the resident has gone to. And it's letting them know that they need to make corrections to that overlap. And we're going to review this process in more detail as well. So I think this is a good time for us to do a little bit of a hands-on process here, just to see what everything looks like. So here I'm logged into an actual My Valuations mobile app. I'm logged into it. Here at the bottom, I click on Review MyQuickPass Logs. You can see all my logs are listed here. So some of the things I want you to notice here at the very top, it has April 11th, 9:31 a.m. now. It shows 58 minutes. I can click on it. It shows the activity is in progress. It's 59 minutes and 10 seconds and counting. It started at 9:31 a.m. Notice comes up. If you noticed, it came up very quickly that said you have 7 geofence locations that are being monitored. Notice at the top here, I can click save, I can click stop, I can click delete. So as the user, I have the ability to make adjustments to my own hours. I can click save here. If I go to yesterday's entry on April 10th, for example, I click on that. Because that activity has already passed, notice that I can make adjustments. So notice how the start time is 7:43 p.m. and the end time is 9:19 a.m., for example. I can say, well, actually the end time was earlier. And notice as I reduce the time here, so I'm reducing the end time to 8:30 a.m. Notice above it, it says duration is 12 hours and 46 minutes. And it said it was originally 13 hours and 35 minutes. And over here, it says originally it was 9:19 a.m. So the system does allow the resident to make adjustments to all their entries, but the system also keeps track of all the entries. That means it will let you know what the original was, and it will let you know what they have changed it to. So here is the resident. If I click on save, it'll now save that with the adjusted entry that I have. As I go through all these various entries I have here, I can take any other entry that was in the past. I can make adjustments to those as well. I'm trying to see if I have another good option. Yeah. So I also wanted to show you an option here so that you can see it later on in your configuration. This particular entry for outpatient activity on April 7th was 45 minutes long. You will learn later on today that you're able to set, when you're setting geofence locations, you can have more than one activity type associated with the geofence location. So what does that mean? Let's say you put a geofence around the hospital. And you might say that when residents are coming into the hospital, they're coming in to do patient care inpatient activity, but they might be coming in to do call activity. So you're able to have multiple activities. In this example, the outpatient activity, when I click on it, notice at the bottom, it gives me the option for patient care outpatient and moonlighting. So the default activity was patient care outpatient. So if I did nothing, the system just goes to the default. It will prompt me, it'll give me about 5 minutes time when I first enter the geolocation to select what my activity is. If I don't select an activity, it defaulted to patient care outpatient. I can always come back and change that to moonlighting and click save, and that'll save my my activity. So the idea of making changes and addressing and reviewing their hours is quite straightforward and doesn't require a tremendous amount of work. On the right-hand side of the screen, so pay attention here to the very top where we have locations. I'm holding that just so you can see that. When I click on locations, the system will actually show all the various locations that are being monitored. So as the trainee, again, remember, I want you to learn what the system is doing. Here, one of the biggest questions that comes up is about privacy and what are you monitoring? What are the geofence locations? Are you monitoring something that maybe I don't want you to monitor because it's private. Well, they can see all of that. There's no way to hide this from them. So, for example, if I click on outpatient, I can see all the activities regarding outpatient. And notice on the top right-hand side, I have an option for map. When I click on map, it actually shows the specific geofence location that is being monitored. So I can actually see that. I can see, oh, this is at this particular location, and these are all the activities at that location. So as the individual user, I can see each one of those individual mapped activities. For example, when I was at the ACGME conference, we drew a geofence around the exhibit hall. So we were monitoring our own entry and exit from the exhibitor hall just for the sake of tracking and demonstrating. So those activities are older activities that are not showing up on here anymore. So that gives you a quick idea of what those functionalities are in MyQuickPass. Of course, they still have the ability to go to submit their clinical hours, and all their clinical hour activities are available for them to make adjustments manually in here as well. So none of this detail changes for them. They're still able to go through and select different items, make changes to it, save those hours. So that functionality is still there for them. All the violations are still reported in real time, and they can be commented on as well. So that functionality doesn't go away and is still available for them. So let's now get into the administrative nuts and bolts of how you set up everything with MyQuickPass. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to establish your geofence. Geofences can be set up at the department level for the locations that are unique to your department, and they can be set up at the institutional level. So the GME office can set up locations that are standard for all of the residency programs in the institution, and individual programs can also configure locations that are unique to them. When things are configured institutionally, only institutional admins can adjust those. Departments cannot adjust institutional level locations. They can see them, but they cannot adjust them. And vice versa, an institution works only on institutional level stuff, and they don't manage the department level stuff. For those of you that have access to MyQuickPass already, you're going to find the controls are under the menu option clinical hours. We go to settings, and there's an entire section there for manage QuickPass settings. We're going to review all of this hands-on. So first step in the process will be, it's a four-step process. So the first step will be setting up the geofence name, selecting the user types that are monitored, then the activity types, and then the locations. So the first step here is for us to actually identify the various, the geofence name and description that we want to set up. So how I'm going to go through this process with you right now is to actually bring up each step with you and show you how we go through this. So step one, we're going to go to the menu option clinical hours. We're going to go under clinical hour settings. And here on the right-hand side, you'll see MyQuickPass settings. I am in a GME department, so I have access to department level and institution level. If I'm in a non-GME department, then I will only have access to department level items. So I'm going to click on Manage MyQuickPass Locations Department Level. I see a list of the existing geofence names that I have. So in step one, we have three items that we're going to review here. Step one, we're going to identify the site name. So all the sites can be managed under the My Schedule module for settings where you manage sites. Then we're going to set up a short name for the geofence. That's going to be the name like what you saw before, the name that ends up showing. I'm just going to show you really quick what I meant. These are the short names that are displayed. And the next is an optional step to put a geofence description into the system. You don't have to put a description, but that's the next step. So let's go through that. So what are the sites? I can, if I have set up other sites because my residents are rotating at other institutions, through the My Schedule module, you can set up those different sites, and those sites will show up as a site that you're monitoring. So if I select, let's say the county hospital or the county medical center, then I want to give a short name here. So let's put this as Rosalind Franklin, for example. And notice that I wasn't able to type in the last few letters there because there's a character limit of 15 characters. So maybe I might want to do an abbreviation like that. Then the next step, here optionally I can put an address. There is no obligation for me to put in an address in here or put in any details. It's nice to put that in case you want to. Otherwise, you don't have to put that information into the system. So let's say, for example, in this case, I'm going to put an address in here of North Chicago. Then the next step is for us to identify the user types that we want to monitor. Those user types can be monitored or any of the following user types. So if I only want to track clinical hours on residents, then I click residents. If I want to track them on residents and I have also fellows, I can select fellows. If I don't select these other user types, then they will not be monitored. That means even though they have the mobile app installed, they are not being monitored and they are not being reported. So you can be comfortable in selecting just the user types that are relevant for you. So the next step after selecting the user types is to select the activity types. So because the MyQuickPass entry and exit is tied to duty hours, we have to establish what are the activity types that we are tracking. So we can have more than one activity type, and we're going to select the default activity when there are multiple activities that can be at the same location. And as I mentioned before, they have about 5 minutes to select that. If they don't select it, it'll go to the default selection, and they can adjust that later on as I showed you. So let's say for this location, these are all our activities. Those activities, again, as a reminder, are managed from the menu option clinical hours. You go under settings, you go under manage activity types. Those activity types are categorized into these ACGME categories, and whichever activities are listed as active are the ones that show up when you're managing your activity types for geofence locations. So here, if I say that coming to Rosalind Franklin, you're coming in for patient care inpatient, you might also be coming in for pager call and on-call. So I've now added all of those in there, and it says, well, which one is going to be the default activity? So out of those three, I might say, well, most of the time people are coming in for patient care inpatient. So why don't we just set patient care inpatient as the default? They have 5 minutes to choose an alternative. They can always go back to edit it. No harm, no foul. That makes it easier for managing from your side. So after you've selected that activity, the last one is to set up the locations. So here, I want you to pay particular attention to how you draw those lines around the location. I want you to draw the smallest possible line for the best possible accuracy. And I want you to make sure that different locations that you are outlining, those locations are sufficiently apart from each other. So as I mentioned earlier, because the sensitivity on geofencing is somewhere between 300 to 600 feet, then you want to make sure that the various geofence locations that you're setting up are sufficiently apart from each other and they're not in very close proximity to one another. If you end up having geofence locations that are in close proximity to one another, it'll just create overlaps. So we want to avoid having those overlaps, and that's really the most important part. So as we look at setting up that geofence, this is a map here. The map will default to your institutional address. It's defaulting to our company address area. If I put in that address, it looks up and finds the appropriate address, so I can pick whichever one I want. It will go directly to that particular location. Okay, so now I can click on satellite to see what that particular location looks like, and this is actually an excellent example for you to see what are some of the things we want to do or some of the things we don't want to do. So what I did is I can click on the plus here to zoom in. If I want to really zoom in really high, there's an option here where I can change the tilt of the map. So if I don't want it to be tilted, I can untilt that map for easier viewing. And if you don't like the satellite version, well, no problem. You can go to the map version and go from there. I find the satellite version to be useful because it gives you a good idea of all the various locations. Now let's talk a little bit about drawing those lines and what are some of the best practices for the lines that you're drawing. Over here, there's a draw a shape option. This is a stop drawing option. If I click the stop drawing, it allows me to click and hold my mouse and move the map around. If I then switch to the draw option, I can now go and draw. I have a crosshair. Now, a lot of people might be in the habit of saying, well, I'm just going to draw a line around the whole thing because the whole thing is part of our clinical location. So I'm going to put my mouse on the first location, and I'm going to click my mouse one time, and I let go of the button. And then notice I have a line here now. I'm going to go to the next point, click and hold, and let go. Then the next line, click it, and the next line. I'm just going to go through. All I'm doing is I'm tic-tac-toeing all the various locations that the location parts there, and voila, I have now drawn a location around a virtual geofence around the location that I want to monitor. When your location is this large, remember one of the things I said was to draw lines as small area as possible. When you draw a location like this, this location will have a tremendous amount of sensitivity. Why? Because it represents a very large geofence area. And as I mentioned, that can go in a rural area, it can go several hundred feet. So it might be 1,000 feet out in a rural area. North Chicago would be considered a bit of a rural area. You can kind of see it's quite rural here. So by having a map like this, if the person is driving on the highway here and they're just going by the university, the system can pick them up as coming by the location. Now, what's really good, you'll learn later on, is the system will ignore entries and exits that are less than 5 minutes. So if you popped in because you left your gloves or you want to grab your bag, the system will ignore those hours. It's not a big deal, but we don't want to have an extreme amount of sensitivity so that the person, as soon as they pull into the parking lot, it says they're there. So what I recommend when you're drawing geofences like this is to instead of thinking about drawing lines like this, is to think about drawing lines that are that are a little bit more specific. So how do I get rid of this thing? I've got this geofence now. I don't want it anymore. On the top left-hand side, there's an option to remove selected shape. I just click on that and it's gone. So in looking at this, there's a few ways I can address this. Number one, I can say, well, what's the main entryway for people to come in? It might be that this is the main entry here. So I might just put a box around the main entry. That's sufficient to show their entry and exit. Well, you might say, David, what happens when they go all the way to this side of the building? Well, you're right, that's going to be a problem. So what I find as the most useful way of drawing lines is just simply to draw a square around the general vicinity of that geofence. So a geofence like this, which it may not aesthetically look like I'm covering the entire campus, but functionally I am covering the entire campus. So when I say draw lines around the location in the smallest area possible, I'm referring to this particular idea that we want to draw the smallest possible line that's available. Now, once I click save, it says data saved successfully. Now I have that location that has been added into the system and is available for the resident. Well, the next time the resident actually logs into the system, that's going to be one of those geofence locations that will be tracked in the system and will be visible to the resident for review. So let's take a quick look at that. There we go. Sorry about that. So now I have Rosalind Franklin as a location that's available for me to track. I don't have any activities there. So when I click on it, there's no activities. But when I click on map, it shows the area that on the map that's been drawn as being monitored. So in real time, that information is available and accessible to the resident to see all the various geofence locations. Now, on this page that I have all the different locations listed, notice that this location here that says market, I have it listed as not monitored. And if you look at the list of locations, notice that market is not listed on here either. So any location that you no longer want to monitor, you can simply click on the monitored and it will become not monitored and the system will stop monitoring that particular location. Please pay attention to the fact that I use words like location monitoring. I don't say things like location tracking. So I'm monitoring a specific location. I am not tracking your location. It's important you use the right terminology, because if you start telling people that we're doing location tracking, that's exactly what MyQuickPass does not do. So it's important that you're using the right terminology in terms of what the system is actually doing. So we've gone through the hands-on configuration process. In the last part of our review here is just understanding what some of the smart rules in the system are. So by default, if a resident goes to a location that and they spend less than 5 minutes at that particular location, the system will say that that activity is not being reported. And here I'll show you an example of what that looks like. If you look at the first option here at the very top, it says April 7th, 3:22 to 3:23, 57 seconds, and it says less than 5 minutes, not reported. There's another one over here that was 1 minute. It was less than 5 minutes, so it was not reported. Another one over here is for 4 minutes. Again, not reported. So these are examples of places that have been set up which I drive by. And we want to make sure that those particular locations are not being inadvertently reported, and they are not. Another thing the system will do is it will monitor the total hours that are accumulating, and once the resident hits the 36-hour mark, the system will automatically prompt them to confirm if they're actually there for 36 hours. So these are safety mechanisms we've put into place in case something has happened and the system is still tracking them at that location to see that they've come in, but they haven't left. At 36 hours, it's going to say, are you still there, or did you leave? Because it's kind of strange that you're still there 36 hours later. So that's an automatic rule that's in place. And of course, violations are automatically displayed to the user. And that's something that I showed the screenshots to at the very beginning. All right, so that summarizes the entire process for MyQuickPass. And I want to open up to any questions that you have. I don't see any questions written. I've opened up your mics. In case you have any questions you want to ask, feel free to chime in.